welcome back to the Red Web. And I am Brad West, along with my co-hosts Anastasia and Greg Burrow. I am back from my surgery and I'm sitting up straight, so yay for that. Small miracles.
Yay.
I'm here to do an episode in honor of one of my favorite moments in comic book history, Milestone Media from the 90s. Greg, of course, is here on loan from Dragon's Lair Comic and Fantasy on Anderson, so check them out. So maybe you can find some of these comics, back issues, or trades there if you are interested in what we have to talk about today. Let's get started. We're going to talk about Milestone Media. Recently at the what was the name of the DC?
DC Fandom.
DC Fandom. They announced that they're going to be bringing back Milestone Media in February in a digital format. So we thought it'd be great to talk about Milestone. And sorry, we can bring back up the slide of two of the main creators are Dwayne McDuffie. And we figured it was a good time to talk about him because I mention him all the time as one of my comic donkey heroes. And Dennis Cohen, two of the main creators and founders of the Milestone label. It's really interesting. I met Dwayne McDuffie when I was a teenager, and he was at it wasn't even it was before big comic book conventions. It was like a smaller kind of thing that he was here. It was one of the few times that my parents ever took me anything, as well with my dad, and it was a little show, and he was there with Marvel, and he was very nice, very inspirational. He was it was at the time when everybody was desperate to find somebody to get into comic books, and they were showing everybody their work, and lots of unsolicited work, and you didn't have Artist Alley the way that we have it today, or even 10 years ago. And so a lot of the creators were they're more guarded. They were less fan interactive at that time because they're getting bombarded with people going, oh, look at my work, I want to get a job, and so he was really unique in that he was very open and friendly, and we just talked about some of the projects in the comics and stuff. At the time we were talking about Deathlock was one of the books that I liked that he and Dennis Cohen were doing. I think that's what he was working on that at the time. He might have still been working on Damage Control. I don't remember. Like I said, this was when I was a teenager. But he always made an impression on me, and his stuff always stuck with me. And so when the Milestone stuff came out, I was really into a bunch of it, especially because I didn't really get into comic books, especially decent comics, until Death of Superman is when I started collecting DC. And like you said, it's long-haired Superman. And so that was when Milestone came out, and that was when they did crossovers. And so in addition to having some of the Milestone books, I have a lot of the Milestone crossover books that are really fun. If you get to read the Worlds Collide, I think it's in a trade collection, and there's 2 volumes of it.
Well, also you've got the introduction of Dwayne McDuffie in the Web of Spider-Man.
Oh yeah,
and, he was wanting to read that, and I think that would be really
it's a really fun little thing. So I had found when I was reading, going through some stuff and just looking at old comic books, I was reading an old issue of Web of Spider-Man. This is number 52 from, oh good lord, when was this one published? 89. So it's not that old. It's not that old. And I came across it. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like a little Dwayne McDuffie write-up in here with Marvel welcoming him, and a lot of things I didn't know when he worked on. So when he first started working for Marvel proper, he was the assistant editor of special projects. So which means he basically did everything that wasn't a regular ongoing comic book. So he did all the fun like little side jobs, and so he has like a real good variety of stuff. Mostly, let's see, he does design Marvel press posters, movie and TV adaptations, including the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade comic book adaptation, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the X-Men animated series graphic novels. This is a really funny one. The Punisher movie adaptation, and no, this was not the Thomas Jane one. This was the Dolph Lundgren one. And for those of you that don't remember the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie, I'll have to share it with you someday. I actually managed to find a copy of it.
Oh, neat.
In a way, it was a little bit closer than the Thomas Jane one. It was really kind of fun. It was just jarring to see see him with dark hair. But anyway, Nightmare on Elm Street comics, custom tie-ins, anything that would come out with like action figures or toys that they would write, that DC would have him do write-ups and stuff. He had a lot of fun little things at the beginning of his career. Let's see, freelance credits include Damage Control, which if you've not read that series, it was a cool one. I was explaining the concept to Anna; she wasn't familiar with it, but it's a fun one. It would have made a good TV series. I think at one point ABC was considering spinning off Shield into doing like a Damage Control series, and basically it's what happens after the superhero battle and all of the buildings and the rubble and who cleans up the rubble. And so it was like this company who built technology to help clean up after. So it was really fun because in universe when McDuffie brought the concept, it was like, ever wonder why like they always have these fights and the buildings fall down and then like the next day all the buildings are back up. And it's because, there's like this behind the scenes crew that goes by and keeps everything running. And
well, they kind of also touched on that in the Homecoming Spider-Man movie, as
yes.
well as in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. After the second Thor movie, they were in, they had a little bit of that going on where S.H.I.E.L.D. was there helping to try to help clean up.
Which is, I think, what they were. I think that's where they were first originally starting to plant the seeds of doing a spinoff.
Yeah.
Is having the Damage Control. Let's see. He did. Oh, and like I said,
they also crossed over to Spider-Man. Some other. They did have some Damage Control.
Oh yeah, they had some really fun characters. One of the things we had learned when we were looking at some stuff. If you've seen another one of my favorite comic book creators is I had his name and I dropped his name. Dang it. Oh, help me out here. Harley Quinn. Paul Dini. Jeez whiz. I'm on some good pain medication anyway. So Paul Dini is another one of my favorite superhero writers, creators. He got his start on He-Man and then got into like DC stuff and started working with Bruce Timm on the Batman animated series. He's actually credited as creating Harley Quinn. So Paul Dini's got some cred. And when the not this current Spider-Man animated series, but the one before this called Ultimate Spider-Man, Paul Dini was given reins to write control. He was the main writer and story editor, and he had created. And he was friends with Dwayne McDuffie at a point. And so when he created the episode, they actually introduced Damage Control in the animated series. And he named a character Mac after McDuffie. He created a new character, Mac. It's really funny if you get a chance to watch it. The Ultimate Spider-Man was like not very cerebral Spider-Man cartoon. It was a good balance in between where it was definitely written for fans, but it was definitely written for children too. And so it had a lot of throwbacks and Easter eggs and stuff and fun stuff like that. But it was more so basically. What it was Nick Fury was making the teenage superheroes, including Spider-Man, learn to take responsibility for the fights and stuff and everything. So they had to do like basically community service with Damage Control.
Right.
And Mac was the foreman, and so that was a really good
cute.
one.
So unfortunately, I don't think we mentioned this yet, but Dwayne McDuffie did pass away. But
In
he's
2010 or 2011.
2011.
But he left an amazing body of work behind him that's still inspiring people today. He was also not only in comics, but he did the Static Shock cartoon. He did Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. He did Ben 10. He did a lot of really pivotal cartoons as well as books. I mean, he was one of the creators of Static Shock. So for Milestone.
Right, and for people who are still newer, between Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cowan, I didn't realize how much of my childhood cartoons they both influenced. The Ben 10 one was completely new to me.
You know what? The Ben 10 surprised me too. He got a lot of awards on it and stuff. I know that one of the things we talked about especially when we talk about diversity and pioneers in the field of diversity and superheroes, it was his insistence that the Green Lantern be John Stewart. I mean, it's like we're gonna already have we want diversity in it. You know, we've already got a black Green Lantern, and the cool thing about that is that he elevated John Stewart, because John Stewart in the comic book was like more or less a footnote. I think after his introduction, he was in like the early '80s. He was in all of 8 issues. So it was like years before he came back, and then mostly those were like little cameo kind of things. And then not only he came back in the Kyle Rayner series, but he didn't have his powers at that time. He was just a supporting cast member, and it was Dwayne McDuffie using him in the animated series, and DC realizing, oh hey, people want more diverse, like so.
Especially John Stewart.
Especially John Stewart.
For a whole generation,
and he
John
created
Stewart
him,
is the Green Lantern.
and he made him such a more compelling character that they have since elevated him in the comic, and he's had a lot more prominence in the comic book. So.
Yeah. And also one of the main reasons why a lot of people attribute the failure of the Green Lantern movie is the fact that it didn't have John Stewart. That it was focused on Hal Jordan, which is of course a much the original Green Lantern Corps version of Green Lantern. But for so many people, it was John Stewart was Green Lantern. Mm-hmm. They didn't know who Hal Jordan was.
Yep, and that was about in the beginning where it's like we got past that first wave of superhero movies, and they were starting to hit their fever pitch again.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just the fans who had been there for a while; it was the people who were like, "Hey, superhero movies are a thing. I remember watching Justice League. Let me watch Green Lantern."
Yeah.
And we were like,
a little bit of confusion, right? A lot of confusion. He's always very, very interesting person. I didn't know as much about Dennis Cohen, but I did have a couple of books with his art in it. Like I said, I like Deathlock, and I really loved the Dennis O'Neil run on The Question. If you've ever had a chance,
well, I mean, if you've ever seen his Black Panther artwork,
yes.
Black Panther artwork is absolutely gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And he's done Spider-Man. I mean, it's like a wide swath of.
He's an amazing artist. He has a really an unique style, and you can tell the style because it has like I don't know how to explain it. It has kind of like a more natural look to it. It feels like something. It's like a cross between like a comic book page and like something somebody drew with like colored pencils. He's got this very natural. Like some of it even has like a watercolor look to it, and it's got really cool. I wish I know you can really tell on the Icon book.
I would say his art isn't traditional comic art. I would say his art is more influenced by fine art.
Yes, he definitely puts a fine art spin on it.
It definitely has more of a
organic feel to me.
Yeah, and it's just
it doesn't have that manufactured.
Absolutely gorgeous art.
It's more art than product. Yeah, so he did a special edition Black Panther poster for the movie that was like beautiful. It's just beautiful. I mean, I don't know if I showed it to you, but it's the one where they've got him from behind, and it's got like a kind of a silhouette of the vines, like he's coming out of the jungle and he's looking over Wakanda, and it's really pretty. It's really very nice. It's like definitely a fine art piece. They're pretty interesting characters to me themselves and their lives, and where they went from, and some of the stuff that they had created. I know I've mentioned.
Well, you were talking about one of the cartoons that he did for was it Cartoon Network or Adult Swim or was it?
Oh yes, so yeah, Dennis Cohen was the animation.
The animation head.
Yeah, the chief animation executive for BET. He actually was responsible for getting a lot of content up there, and he developed the Boondocks animated series. So that was
he's co-responsible for the Boondocks.
Yes.
That one blew my mind.
Yeah, I
was like, what?
Yeah. So very influential there,
and it's kind of funny because when she said that, I was like, yeah, I can totally.
You can totally see it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and they had some stuff like both of them had been working behind the scenes for diversity for a long time.
Made a lot of our childhoods that we didn't even know.
One of my favorite stories, and until Marvel releases it, I'm going to keep telling it, is Battlestar, and this was a time when Captain America, when Rick Jones had stopped being Bucky, and Captain America had given up on the government and went off, and John Walker took over as Captain America. And so Mark Grunwald, who was writing at the time, was like, oh, well, if we got a new Captain America, what if we get a new Bucky? and they had this group of characters who, along with Sam Wilson, were basically neighborhood watch kind of thing, where they they were inspired by Captain America and the Falcon to help keep their community safe. And they were called the something Urban Commandos, BUCs. They're called the Bucks or whatever, and it was meant to be kind of a pun on that or whatever. And the one of them was a black man, and so Mark Grunwald was like, oh well, we need diversity. Obviously seeing the need for it. It's like, we got these three guys. Well, if we're gonna make one of them Bucky, let's make the black guy Bucky. And it was Dwayne McDuffie who was like, in very professional manners, like, yeah, dude, you can't really call him that. And he's like, why? Well,
Bucky's his name.
It's kind of Bucky would be his code name, because originally Bucky was short for Buchanan, so that was different.
Still, it's based after him, not necessarily
correct
his superhero name.
So calling a black dude Bucky, well, Bucky has
right, also
so Bucky had Buck specifically had a lot of negative connotations with slavery and stuff. So, and that was not going to go over well. So
it's a very shucky, jivey name.
Yeah, it is. It is. So they changed it to Battlestar, which is a cooler name, obviously. And
right.
And then the new Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was really excited to see, because somebody got some behind the scenes shots, and and there's like another dude in there, and they're all trying to cover up with the trench coats, and every once in a while you get a picture through the trench coats, and it's like, oh my god, that dude is totally Battlestar. So I'm really excited that Battlestar is going to be in it too, because I love the US.
Talking about the new Disney Plus.
The Disney Plus,
that
yeah,
should be coming soon, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm kind of frustrated that we're already getting the second season of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any of the Marvel ones yet.
I think they're trying to wait until they can properly do.
They wanted to
shut everything down.
And I think they're wanting to do Black Widow theatrically.
Yeah, they want it to be in order.
They want it to be in order as much as possible.
They want, because it's like, at least for Marvel, the impression I got was like, they're telling a specific story. And had Black Widow come out earlier, all of the stuff would have been out by now. But they're like, there's something
about
Black Widow,
yeah,
that they're like, no, we need it.
I think it's a lot more than just one thing.
It's got to be.
Just looking at some of the stuff in the Black Widow
trailers. Oh, there's going to be so much cool stuff.
I want to say this really quick because it's topical. It doesn't really have anything to do with this episode, unfortunately, but I highly suggest going and seeing the New Mutants movie. Really enjoyed it.
Yes.
Highly suggest watching it. I really hope that they get to do a second one.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a trilogy.
Yeah. When we watched it, the first thing I thought was like, if they would have just stopped Yang Yang 2 years ago and released it 2 years ago, this movie was perfectly good, and it would have saved the X-Men franchise, because it was a lower budget. Everybody knew it was a lower budget, so it wasn't going to be big, and it was different thematically. It was more of a suspense kind of thing.
The only thing I think that could have made it better is if they had gone more with the horror element.
Yeah, but you knew going in that it wasn't supposed to be blockbuster, destroy the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you didn't feel the disappointment when that didn't deliver, because you knew that wasn't what this was. You knew this was something different. Even if you didn't know what to expect, you knew it was something different. And I think that would have made it.
All the actors did an amazing job portraying these characters. I thought that the actors did amazing. I felt like the story was fine.
The effects were good.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I hope that.
I'm seeing it tomorrow. So.
Oh, okay. But so back to praising Milestone Media.
Yes.
Milestone Media is unique for a lot of reasons, even beyond just the content and the diversity. And that is because it was a huge experiment in creator-owned content. At the time in the 90s, the big shake-up, of course, was Image Comics. Image Comics consisted of artists, creators, writers who worked for Marvel and DC, and it felt discontent by the long-established work-for-hire system by which, you created these intellectual property, and you got, like, this base pay for it, and after that, it was out of your hands. You didn't get to say what the characters did or where they went, and you didn't get anything off of the merchandise. If it got turned into a movie, you were lucky if you got credit for creating it. And they kind of felt like, that this, if we're some of them had the clout. Some of them had egos, and but it was enough to get everybody together and make this new. And it was the first time you had an independent label that gave Marvel and DC, the big two, any kind of a challenge. And so DC, very smartly, which makes me wonder what happened afterwards, when Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cohen, and a couple of others came to them with this idea. The main thing that gave Image the advantage, you have to think beyond just creating the characters and having the creators and the art and the ideas. You need to have a way to get it out to the people. And so they had a distribution deal with, was Malibu at the time, before Marvel bought Malibu, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was Malibu. But they had somebody to distribute their product when they painted it, and after they created it and everything, Well, DC was like, okay, what if we sponsored a creative owned content to keep our artists happy, so that they don't go running over to this other company and try to do this. We want to give them the ability to create their own stuff, but still make money for us. And they're like, well, we can help them with the distribution. And so Milestone, it wasn't the first time. This is the second time. The first time was a complete thing. It was a mess, and we'll have to tell you about Sovereign 7 one day. But Milestone basically was a full line of comics that they had their own creative oversight and their own editorial. DC had minimum influence on.
Gabby, if you want to put up the slide with the.
Oh yes, please put the slide up. Show them some of the context.
There.
And DC.
And Damage obviously is Marvel. Questions obviously.
Dennis Cohen.
And then there's also Black Panther up there, but that the Static, Icon, and Hardware, all those up there, those were the original releases of
the original lineup for Milestone. So DC was like, we'll distribute them for you. And you notice that there's 4 main titles. The really interesting thing, and the thing that made this work and made it different, and I was reading a quote from Dennis Cohen, and from Dwayne McDuffie, and he basically said, diversity is more than just having a black character or a Asian character or a gay character or whatever. And it's like, when you have a minority, they're representing that whole group. And it's like, but when you look at white people, Superman doesn't represent all white people anymore than Lex Luthor represents all white people.
They were all considered universal characters.
Yes. So when it comes to having minorities, you needed to have more than one. You needed to have a eclectic group of black characters and Hispanic characters and female characters written in a position of strength. And so they knew from the onset it wouldn't work with one book. It had to be
multiples.
It had to be like a body of series.
That Blood Syndicate one looks real choice.
Yeah,
that art is beautiful.
I liked a lot of it. Like that was the one that had some of the characters that I like. Brick House. I just
oh my.
If you've seen Incredibles 2, they actually have a character on Incredibles 2, and I don't know her name, but every time I see Incredibles 2, I'm like, how did they get Brick House into this cartoon?
Oh my.
Because in the Incredibles, this character felt like it made play. It works, Brick, whatever its name was, and she looked like she was made out of bricks. But I'm like, but there was already a character like that in Milestone called Brick House, and I like it. You can't not read this comic book without singing Rick James every time you get to that. Every time they say her name, I'm like, ow. You could not. So, but that's some of the fun too, though, is especially when it's their own voice. They can write their own stuff, and if they want to put like little fun stereotypical jabs, it has a different impact. It has more self-aware, and I think that's one of the things that gave it its charm.
Well, it's like in Milestone Comics, it looks like it came out in the middle of like the heat of the Comics Code Authority, so it's like we're having to have something where you could like divert away and like talk about issues that you felt like you weren't comfortable talking about because of that.
Yeah.
That going on.
Milestone actually came out years after the Comic Code Authority was already gone. Comic Code Authority went away in the 80s.
Or they started.
1993.
When was
They
it?
started panning out in the 2000s, I thought.
No, we found
Because-
out like the last one died like right in the 2000s. Remember when we did the last episode? You found like the last publisher to use it finally gave out in like
no,
2000.
DC dipped in 2011.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Something late.
Wow. I mean, I guess.
I don't know.
guess
I don't
they
want to
just-
check my notes that far, but
Yeah, let's check. We have to. Yeah, we need to check our notes. We need to.
I
we
went
try
try
to
to fact check and do our homework, but you guys got to remember a lot
Mostly
of
it was like mid to late 80s that the Comic Code Authority.
I
I
mean,
mean,
when Marvel.
there was a point where they kind of chilled, where they were like, "Fine, I guess we'll do that," but it's still that resurgence of like, we've had to have these characters that are sanitized for everybody.
Yeah, if I remember correctly when we did it, it's they kept trying to adjust to make themselves relevant to justify their existence.
Right.
So they strung along for a good while
Just
before
by the
they
time,
finally pulled down altogether.
right, by the time everyone dropped, they had their means of
Because, I mean,
regulating
80s,
themselves.
Yes.
I think maybe what it was is that they did some books on, some books off. Because I know
Yes.
that in the 80s, that's when like the Dark Knight Returns came out. That's when
Mhm.
Killing Joke came out. That's when
Well, I mean, I'm looking right here at it's got Comic Code approved on it.
wow.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Mhm.
See,
Yeah.
I'm not imagining things.
Yeah, it definitely has
It's like-
Comic Code approval in it. So,
But
and
yeah,
so,
I mean,
that was 93.
93, 94, yeah.
Yeah.
it's like, but what made a huge impact is like, yeah, when we talk about the after
21st
effects of that, it's that because they had a very straight and narrow version of what's considered friendly for kids, not a lot of stories were
Yeah.
getting told the way they felt like they could, and Milestone definitely shook a lot of those stories up, especially when I was growing up and watching the TV shows.
But the important thing is that they got rights to they got creative rights, they got merchandising rights or whatever came after, they got licensing rights,
Which is
And-
a huge deal.
which is a huge deal. So when the comics finally folded, and there's a lot of reasons for why they ended up falling under, but right after DC canceled the line, Dwayne McDuffie got Static Shock produced on the Warner Brothers station as an animated series.
Yeah.
And so he was
Saturday morning cartoons
yeah,
time.
he had
I love
done
that show.
it,
Oh,
it was great.
awesome.
Multiple Emmy award winning. It was one of the most praised shows. I love and they never made him gay on the series, but in the comic book eventually Richie came out. Gear,
Is it?
his
Yeah.
best friend, came out.
Uh-huh.
But they did do a lot of other really good diverse stuff on that show. Some really fun. One of my favorites is, and it's not just because of the spiders, but I love the episodes. And it wasn't one episode; it was a little group of episodes where they went to vacation in Africa to learn about their own history. And he encounters the African superhero Anansi, who takes his name after, of course, the creation spider.
Oh,
Who has
that's
these really cool. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Is he has like these like illusion powers and stuff like that, and it's actually really very fun. And so yeah, they made it very educational without it being like smack in the face educational. And I also like the we've talked about this a lot on other shows about the concept of redemption. One of my favorite things about the Static Shock show is that they went out of the way. Yes, you had certain villains who were just straight up mustache twirly villains. Like I know Evan was written to be just like he's the darkness. He's evil. There's just he's
Right,
evil.
there's
you
no
know he's
doubt
evil.
about it.
Yeah, he's the definitive gang leader, greedy, bad dude. But a lot of the other characters, like I love the stories with Rubber Band Man, where he wants to be a good guy. He redeems and he reforms. And there's a couple of other ones where learning how to help people become better. In the comic books, they did that a lot with the Milestone comic books. I know one of the things with Rocket, one of her main storylines. I can't remember the character from Blood Syndicate, but was like a crack addict basically,
Mm-hmm.
and she helped her to overcome addiction and learn to be a better person and stuff like that. So
Right. Well, and that's a big deal change too, because again, in early comics, it's like it's very much these are the good characters, these are the bad characters, and they just stay bad characters. It's like the characters being more like most of them being down on their luck, and like with a little bit of a push in the right direction, they can be redeemed is like
yeah,
a huge deal.
yeah,
Because that's more true to life.
That's what I love about Spider-Man. Spider-Man cartoons and Spider-Man comics. Of all of the characters that you ever read, he's the number one that has, unless a writer comes in and screws with them, and there's been a couple of writers, I'm like, but he's the one who honestly believes that, other than Norman Osborn, everybody has a chance to redeem. Everybody should be given the chance to do better, and that's why he doesn't kill, is because he doesn't believe that that's too final. He thinks that people should be able to be better. The world is better if you have faith in people.
Right,
Well,
even in the
whole
movies,
Spider-Man one, especially the first 100 by Stan Lee. I mean, just Robbie Robertson, Gloria. There's just so many examples of diversity in Marvel Comics early on, where they make a difference. I mean, Robbie Robertson. I mean, everybody wants to go to Robbie Robertson. They don't want to talk to J. Jonah Jameson.
So yeah,
you talk to J. Jonah Jameson, you're just going to get yelled at. You go to Robbie Robertson, you can actually talk to somebody intelligent.
And I think that's what Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cohen tried to capture with the Milestone comics. They tried to capture not just diversity of characters, but much more diversity of storylines. The interesting thing to me about Icon and Rocket and the Icon book, if you read it, it actually, even though it's Icon and Rocket, the book's really Rocket's story. Like, it's really mostly told from her side of things, and she's like a kid who's on the streets and gets in trouble, and basically talking about redemption or whatever. Her whole story starts when her and her friends break into this rich lawyer's house to rob him. The lawyer, I forget. What's Icon's first name? Mr. Freeman.
It was
is
a
it
cool
Atticus?
first. It was in.
Or no, that was begins. I want to say
it was a really cool first name.
But anyway, he's like the lawyer, and he's considered to be very. What's the word that I would use? Like, they wrote him like where the other black characters kind of disrespected him because he talked very proper and very cleanly and
Freeman.
Augustus. I knew it was an A. I'm thinking Atticus because of
I knew it was a very proper
because of Lovecraft Country. But yeah, in like other character, he gets kind of put down because he doesn't use slang, he doesn't use contractions, he talks very, very, overly educated. Sounds like they accuse him of trying to be a white man, basically, so he's very stuffy and that kind of thing. And so the kids break in to rob him, and he stops them, and he catches Rocket, and that's how for the first time in years, he uses his powers, and she sees it, and so she's the one who she's trying to convince him to be a hero. She's like, you've got this power, why aren't you helping your people? Very, very much like what you've seen in the Black Panther theme. It's like, you've got the power to help people, what are you doing, and in Icon's kind of way, he would secretly help, like, muggers and things here and there, using his powers and whatever, but he was never like a superhero. And it was Rocket who convinced him to be a superhero.
Right. It's like Luke Cage now, where really like his origin is he starts in slave times, and so by the time he's like gotten to modern times, he's pretending to be his like great grandson, and is like, just leave me alone.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he's very despondent.
And then the person grabs him and is like, Rocket's like, yes, we need to pull you out into the limelight, you need to be a superhero.
Yeah, that's another one of the cool things about Icon. I've said it before. I think Icon would make a great movie.
Yeah, he was a more begrudging superhero.
Because, yeah, well, and he had good reason to. I think that's what makes it interesting, is because he's you can't fault him. Like his species has like a genetic encoding for stealth or camouflage to protect them. That when it's kind of like Superman crashed in an alien spaceship, but the spaceship genetically altered him to mimic the first sign of intelligent life on the planet that it encountered,
which was a black woman in a cotton field.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, so he became a black boy, a black child, and he was there was at the end of slavery and abolitionism.
Yeah, it was 1839, meaning we're right at the end of what's going on, but still in the heat of the moment.
Yes, definitely enough for him to see as he's got this long life and doesn't age, so he gets to adulthood. Right. And he has to keep pretending to be his son, grandson, great-grandson.
Right, and especially from then to the 80s, it's like, for people who aren't keeping track, we got towards the abolition of slavery, there was the beatings and the lynchings, overvoting.
And the Jim Crow laws.
Right, segregation, Jim Crow, just, he's had a lot of reasons to be like.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, he's not necessarily the most in tune to helping humanity because he hasn't seen the best of it. So I like that.
I want to make sure that this gets out there. What's your favorite Icon moment?
Oh,
we were talking about it earlier.
Yes. Okay. So at one point they did cancel the line, but because of the popularity of the Static Shock animated series, they tried to move some of the characters into the main DC universe. And one of my favorite books that Dwayne McDuffie did was Milestone Forever, which was like kind of the explained what happened in the Milestone universe and how it was going to be. It was supposed to be integrated into the main DC universe. And there's another team called the Shadow Cabinet, which is basically kind of like the Justice League, and they were tricked into breaking into the satellite, the Justice League satellite. And so you have the Milestone superheroes fighting the DC superheroes and everything. And when Icon and Superman encounter each other, they don't fight. They like look at each other and they instantly recognize each other's power, and they respect each other, and they understand that they're each other. They go off by themselves to a moon and they sit and they talk it out, and then they come and stop everything. So it's like I love that you always have that like the heroes fight before they fight, talk it out kind of thing. But Icon and Superman both see and respect and recognize each other as we should just talk. Why don't we just talk? And it's like we don't have enough of that. I know it's more fun and action if they fight each other first, but it was really fun for them to go against the NOLA convention, and I think that only worked the way it did because Icon is the kind of character that he is. A lawyer and somebody who's seen a long life and a lot of different things and a lot of different kinds of people, and he would be the kind to recognize Superman as a peer.
Again, the brilliance of Dwayne McDuffie.
Yeah. And stuff. Yeah, he did a lot of cool stuff. Icon and Rocket is the ones that I read more of. I read some of the Static. I didn't get as into Static as the comic book. It was markedly different than the cartoon. I love the Static animated series. Comic book had quite a few differences and made it a little bit harder for me to read. And like I was telling Anna earlier, I don't know, as a white guy, as a gay white guy, I can't really say for sure what is stereotypical, what isn't. But there was a lot of stuff in it that kind of it turned me off, and I don't know.
I would have to read it. I don't know.
I know, and it's like, and to be fair, I've always been under the belief, not everything is for everybody. You can't make everything for everybody. And it was a very good comic book, but it had too many things I just couldn't identify with.
I'm game for reading all of it.
Yeah, and I think that you have to compare the original Milestone Static to the post animated series Static, because there's definitely a different tone and a different voice to the characters.
Oh yeah.
The Static in the comic book is not as positive of a character. He's not as happy-go-lucky. He's a lot more guarded and a lot more. When he gets the powers, he's more of the he.
Leave me alone.
No, he's more of them like, oh, now I got the powers, now I can get back in the bullies kind of thing. You know, it's kind of a different, it's a different dynamic.
Which makes sense because it's like he's like a teenage character. He was a teenager when it started, right? Like he's a teenage character in some weird times, but when you go to DC where these were strictly Saturday morning cartoons for like what was
4
that?
years,
What 10, 11 when it started? I don't know. I'd have to check. I'm not prepared for that. I'm not going to come to terms with that.
Static Shock was in 2001, 2002. It came out at the end of Batman Beyond because Batman Beyond crossed over to it.
I was 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It came out
8 or 9.
Right at 2001.
No. I was 9. It's like Mom will correct my math later.
Probably.
But it's like, but yeah, I was 9 when it came out.
But yeah, in 2000, yeah.
So yeah, 8 or 9. But right. It was it's one of those like by then that block, even though it had like we're trying to attract more older kids, more teenagers, there was some stuff that I'm like, yeah, I guess you can't. I guess that's not something we can show to kids yet.
Yeah.
Especially since it was up for everybody.
Well, yeah, because like I said, as creators, they were bold and they took a lot of really good chances, and for better or for worse, good on DC for at least giving them a chance to put it out there. Like we were talking about the Big Bang, which was what gave a lot of the characters their powers in the animated series. It was. They call them the Bang Babies, like they're kids that were there, whether they were in the gang war or not, that were there or in adjacent to.
And got affected.
And the warehouse had this. Was it like a drug or something that the bad guys were trying to create, and the police used tear gas, or crowd suppressant gas, and the two mixed. And created this like unforeseen, superhero reaction, and which was strong enough actually on its own. But in a comic book, it's a little bit darker because the police find out about this pending gang war, and they deliberately alter the tear gas with radioactive markers, because their intention is to tag all of the gang members who were there at the fight, and then tag them with this radioactive marker, kind of like they do with like money and stuff at banks, so that they can track them down to their homes and arrest everybody who was at this game. So, oh yeah, we found you, we got the radioactive proof, you were there or whatever, and especially today, and we should bring that up when we do our episode about police and comic books. But especially today, that's like a concept that would probably get a lot of backlash.
Oh yeah, or well, it would be that looks right.
That looks right.
It's like
some attention for sure.
Right, but and that was one of those like, it's a surprise for other people, but it was kind of a fact of life thing for a while. So, especially with the 80s, it's like they had the heat of all of or they were in the midst of all of the police violence.
Yeah,
and stuff.
A lot of that. But yeah, I think adding the radioactive, deliberately making it radioactive tear gas.
And then surprise, they accidentally
and they create themselves a whole bunch of much more powerful gang members.
Super powered enemies now.
There goes the day.
Rocket, another reason that I think she was an interesting character is that she finds out later on in the book that she's actually pregnant from her boyfriend, and so it's another issue that they would have not normally addressed in a mainstream superhero comic book is teen pregnancy. So that's actually some really, and if you haven't had a chance to read one of my favorite series, I could not find my Milestone books when we were looking in our garage and recently moved. I found my DC books, and so the Milestone crossover, I definitely found Worlds Collide, and that one was really interesting.
The Superman one looked really cool.
So it's technically the first time that Milestone and DC characters met, even though when the story was over, they forgot. So like the issue I was telling you about later on when they met again, they had not previously remembered their first meeting, so it made a bit of a difference.
So comic book logic.
They just forgot the end.
But I think my favorite thing about this crossover, it was the first time that they had acknowledged in a comic book. We're talking about being meta in a comic book that comic books were comic books. So in the Milestone world, in the fictional city of Dakota, which is based on Detroit, which was of course where Dwayne McDuffie is from, but the fictional city of Dakota City and their world, that they read DC Comics. And so when the crossover happens and Superman appears in the Blood Syndicate, and when I think it was Fade who first interacted with them, he's like, "Who are you supposed to be?" He's like, "Oh, I'm Superman." And he's like, right. No, Superman doesn't have long hair. He's like, "No, I'm Superman." He's like, "Oh yeah," and like, "Where are your glasses, Clark Kent?" And of course, Superman's, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Isn't Lois Lane?" He's mocking him basically. He's like, "Is Lois Lane here to do an interview and everything?" And it's really funny because like he meets these complete strangers in the middle of this fight, and they know everything about him and his secret identity and everything. So it was quite humorous and like meta. And of course, then they start realizing, okay, in your world, Superman's a real thing. They didn't know about Superboy, the clone of Superboy. They knew more of the traditional Superman stuff and Supergirl and everything. Mm-hmm. But it was actually really funny them trying and navigating the fact that he didn't, not everybody's. Okay, well, these other heroes are coming out. Not everybody knows my name, so keep this stuff to yourself, kind of thing. It was amusing. I very much find it was funny. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, you should read it sometime. It was one of my favorite things at the time.
Creatively, I think that's just entirely too much fun.
It is.
Yeah, that is hilarious.
And they did a lot of cool stuff, and Superboy flirting with Rocket and her knocking him down, and it's just. It's really amusing.
A couple of quick series. What's Dennis Cohen working on now?
Yeah.
Because luckily we still have Dennis Cohen. Dennis Cohen is still alive, so he's still creating stuff for us.
So basically, they canceled the comic books, and it was mostly because of the comics implosion of the 90s. Because of Image Comics and every independent wanting to be the new Image, and there was oversaturation of the market. And unfortunately, even with the quality and the diversity of Milestone Comics, they ended up getting canceled.
Yeah, so he's working on Dennis Cohen's working on the new Black Series Question, which we knew about.
Oh yes. So yeah, he worked on the Question with Dennis O'Neil in the.
And then there's a Captain America
in the '80s. That's an amazing series,
That's
and
2010.
he's recently come and done a new Question series on DC's Black Label. So DC has their adult-only Black Label series, mature readers, and there's this series called The Many Deaths of Victor Sage. So it's actually really, his artwork is amazing.
He did a Star Wars comic on Mace Windu.
Oh, I would not be surprised.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I have that. I do have that. Yeah. I have that with the Star Wars stuff.
And of course, he's working on the new Milestone stuff.
The new Milestone stuff.
Coming out digitally, unfortunately. I wish that they were printing them.
So Milestone, it got canceled, but then the animated series was enough to get Static brought back for a couple of miniseries until they tried integrating them into the main DC universe for a little bit. Unfortunately, I think what they were trying to do with integrating them in the main DC universe is they were trying to do what they did with Jim Lee's property. So little bit of comic book history background. Image Comics, one of the founders was Jim Lee, and he left. They all left the main companies because they didn't like being the work for hire contract kind of work. Because of the relative success of Milestone Comics, DC made a deal with Jim Lee to bring his content back from Image
because he owned his own content.
Because he owned his own content in Image. So he broke away and he basically defected back to DC. Only DC gave him a very similar deal that they did with Milestone, whereas they had their own imprint, which is the Wildstorm imprint. Wildstorm was their own little in-universe kind of thing, separate, but DC was able to publish and distribute and make a profit off of it. And so that was one of the things. So, but this happened after But
I want to say
Milestone.
the latest time that they've done it, they actually did it with Brian Michael Bendis. He brought his titles over that were separate. He brought, and DC is actually publishing his books now.
Yes. Oh, that was part of his deal, right? That was part of his deal. So yeah, Milestone actually helped pave the way for that, and then of course by the time that they started integrating Milestone comics into the main proper universe, they decided to reboot everything with the New 52, and other than Static, Milestone kind of got left behind. Static actually got moved into the Teen Titans because he was so popular and had enough recognition. The Wildstorm stuff got moved into DC proper, and because of legal battles after the death of Dwayne McDuffie, there were delays on republishing and reusing the content because ultimately what it came down to, his widow felt like everybody kept talking about bringing back Milestone Comics, but she's like, my husband created like the bulk of this, or was responsible for a good bit of it, enough of it that his estate should still be considered. And there was some back and forth, and I'm not sure, like the available to the public information isn't really clear. How much of it was deliberate or unintentional, but they worked it out recently. And same said Jim Lee announced at the DC fandom that they were going to be bringing back Milestone. I was really super excited about it, and I still am in a way, except then of course Greg let me know that it's gonna be all digital. I thought it was just gonna be digital first.
From what I heard and from what I was seeing, it looks like it's gonna be digital first, and if it does well enough digital, then they'll do trade paperbacks with collected volumes.
Okay.
But I know Jim Lee has been pushing really hard for everything to go digital and to not have as many printed.
Which is
unfortunate because the whole point of having more diverse characters is we need to be able to get those into the hands of the fans who will appreciate it.
Right.
And digital limits a lot.
Right. Well, and it's missing because there's two aspects of it. It's the reading the stories, and then it's being able to like collect and memorialize these characters. And sure, I could buy a toy, I can buy another freaking Funko Pop, but it's like sometimes it's nice to have the physical books with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are going to be relaunching for February for Black History Month. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed.
Stay tuned. That is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, for a positive reception for them. It's going to be a new Icon and Rocket series, a new Static series. I don't know if they're doing Blood Syndicate or Shadow Cabinet, but then the fourth book is something completely new. One of the creators, I have to go back and check my research, I don't remember then, was one of the guys that they had actually tapped back in the 90s to do the book, and he didn't want to take the chance on it. He had other projects that he felt were more of a sure thing, and he kind of, I guess, regretted it because when they came back and gave him a chance again, and he's like, oh yes. So there's some new blood in there too, not replacing Dwayne McDuffie, obviously, but definitely keeping the spirit alive. And so I'm really
the torch.
Yeah, carrying the torch.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of carrying the torch, at Anaheim Comic Con started after McDuffie's death. They started a Dwayne McDuffie Minority Achievement Award for artists. So that's an amazing way to carry on in his memory, and just watching his shows and remembering the pioneer of him and Dennis Cohen. I mean, his art and his voice, you can see it. Like I said, it's just so amazing. And
highly suggest picking some stuff up.
Oh yes. It's like for our last minute plugs, it's like what homework are we giving our people?
Definitely see if you can find. I mean, if you're a DC fan and you want to have like kind of a just dip your toe into something a little bit lighter, then definitely the Worlds Collide. If you can find DC Milestone Worlds Collide, that's a fun collected edition. And I highly recommend the Milestone Forever book. It's like it's a 2-issue prestige format. And the characters, Hardware and Zombie are another of the really good ones if you want to read some more interesting separate characters. They're a whole different dynamic and a whole different aesthetic that really, really, really emphasize the diversity of the kinds of characters. I like the team books. I like Blood Syndicate. I like interactions of characters and stuff like that. So there's some good ones. And even if you're not really into the Milestone kind of stuff, Dennis Cohen's art is amazing, and he's doing the Black Label question, the lives of the deaths of Victor Sage, which is really good. I've only read up to the 2nd issue, but I'm looking forward to finishing it off. But his work, it's amazing. He belongs up there with Alex Ross and artists who create more of like a fine art feel to the work and stuff. Yeah. So, and if you want to read some old school stuff that's really hardcore, the old Dennis O'Neil, Dennis Cohen question book, it's really good. It's really, really good. If you want something it's hard hitting, it's got a lot of really good political commentary in that too. You can definitely tell, trying to break the barriers of the kind of storytelling that you can do in comic books. That's a really good one.
And Deathlock was the first book they worked on, right?
To my knowledge, it's the first one they worked on together. I'm not exactly sure where they met, but the Deathlock book it's the 2nd volume, and it was a 4-issue miniseries. And what was the name of it that I hold on. It was.
It's like, well, he's
The Living Nightmare of Michael Collins.
Check it out. That's the first thing. And you guys take care. Have a really wonderful day, and stay safe out there, everybody.
We're gonna do something really, really fun next week. Keep your eyes open for next week's our hot episode, right?
Hot Wings episode.
We're gonna try our hand at a Hot Wings episode.
We're gonna torture ourselves for views.
Yeah. If you want to see
hottest superheroes and hottest wings.
Hottest superheroes and the hottest wings. And so you want to see us, come back for that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Red Web. We adore you. Subscribe and like and comment and tell us what you want to see and how we did.